TJ asked me, like, what is my story and my healthcare background and how did I get into healthcare? I was married to a physician, and we had moved to a rural community, and really in a rural community, all you do is either banking, healthcare, or hotel, restaurant, right? So I was fortunate enough to get into healthcare in therapy, physical and occupational therapy practice. Got into that, got into long-term care, became a nursing home administrator, became a board member on a nursing home district, got into subacute rehab, um, and so I had a lot of experience in different settings. Came to Mizzou to do outpatient clinic work, and then got into patient experience, and now I'm into school of medicine administration. So quite a variety of different settings. And I feel that my experience in nursing homes and Alzheimer units, subacute rehabs is where I kind of caught the urge to really dive into patient experience, because you're creating a home for someone to live in. So how do you create a home? Someone's moving into your facility. How do you create an environment where they're going to be very difficult? They're going to age in place. They're going to probably pass away in that room. How do you make it a great experience for them? So that's kind of where I got my bug. And really the nursing home industry, I feel, have been on the forefront of experience all along, because they've had to do that, create a home for people. So that's kind of my professional story with in healthcare.
Yeah.
Let me turn off my email.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
So have you, so as far, I'll ask kind of a two different parts of a question here, but so leaders wise, as far as a leader that you've had in your life, is there somebody that, has had a profound impact on you that you kind of lean back and think about, kind of glean back on the past and think about, oh yeah, like that's where I kind of acquired that skill or that mindset or anything along those lines?
Totally. I think about this guy all the time. I mean, we got to go way back. We got to go back to 1984.
Where did I go?
So 1984, TJ, I was a scrawny little kid, and I went to high school where we had a pretty good football program, and I had never played football in my life. And I was in a moment in my life where I needed some leadership, some mentorship as a young kid. And our high school football coach is an outstanding human being, right? Very positive. I would walk through a brick wall for the guy. Taught me how to work hard. Taught me how to persevere. Don't give up. And he was not one of those coaches that yelled at you. He was just one of those guys who had that skill, who could bring out the best in anyone, whether you're a 5-star athlete or just a walk-on or something, right? So the reason he had such an impact, my dad traveled a lot as a kid. So he would be home for my games, but he would never be there during the week, right? He was providing for us. So my coach is kind of this father figure to me, and just literally a great human being. And I still reach out to him once in a while. Like if I know he's moved, he coached college for a little bit, then came back to high school, but he's still coaching out there. And and so I will email him once in a while, and he'll email back. It's really cool. And all of his players feel the same way. He's just a great coach. So one great moment was like when I first moved to Columbia about 5 years ago. I was in subacute rehab, and I had a patient that we would take to the spring football games. And so he was this patient was a former coach at Mizzou. He was a 2-time All-American at Southern Cal back in the 30s. I mean, legendary player from Missouri, but went to Southern Cal, but came back to Mizzou to coach, and coach with Dan Devine and Don Farrell. And so I would take him to all the Tiger Talks and take him everywhere in the bus, right? And so we go to the spring game. We're just walking. He's in a wheelchair. I'm pushing him around, and I see my high school football coach. I knew my high school football coach played at Mizzou in the 60s, right? And I knew his son, who I knew as a baby, was a tight end coach here at Mizzou. But I had no, and so I see him. I go, well, coach, what are you doing here? And he immediately talks to my patient I'm wheeling around, because my patient coached him at Mizzou.
Yeah.
And so as they're talking gap control, defense. They're using all this terminology I heard as a player, and it was just the most amazing moment of like, I was coached by my coach, who was coached by a legend at Mizzou. I mean, you never think about how you're going to connect to someone, and so it gives me goosebumps right now thinking about it.
Yeah.
And his son doesn't no longer coaches here, but just a cool moment. And I took a picture with him, and then I told him I was getting into experience and kind of position coaching. And I go, coach, I emailed him. He's now in Kansas City. I don't really coach football players, but I do try to coach professionals on how to be better, right? And I thanked him for all his leadership. And what's great about him is he'll respond and say, oh, it's so great to hear from you. It makes me feel so good to hear from you. Is this, how many players he has coached in his life?
Sure.
Thousands, tens of thousands. And he remembers me, and he probably remembers everyone. So I would say that's a long answer to your question, but he'd be my high school football coach. And I use a lot of things he said taught me as a player and as a student to this day.
Yeah, no, that's great. First of all, I appreciate you sharing that, because that's always something that a lot of people can relate to. And I think we're just kind of hearing your story a little bit. He saw something in you that you didn't even see in yourself yet, right? But like, as people, how often are those the people that we kind of look back and think like, wow, they made a big difference in my life? Because we do kind of just see ourselves for what we could have been or what other people are, but we're not. So when you have somebody of influence like that who comes along and talks to you and treats you in a way that's not the scrawny kid that can't, it's the athletic kid that can, and all of a sudden you just take a switch in mindset, and I had a coach that did the same thing for me too. He's right. Yeah, Coach Whipke, and he asked a lot of us, but it was always purposeful. And he cared so much about us, and that's why he wanted us to run sprints, because he wanted us to win, right? And there were times after games we would go run sprints just because we knew it was going to make us better. He was sitting on the bus, and our whole team lined up, and it was somewhat to make him proud, but it was also because he just kind of created it in us, to do that, which
you're right. And no matter if the leaders in football or in healthcare, if it's someone you want to work for, you'll work really hard for them.
Yeah.
And like you said, I was scrawny, but I gained 20 pounds that summer, and because I worked out on the conditioning, and they noticed it, right? Yeah. So when you do work hard, people that are good leaders will notice it, and they'll give you a shot. Once you get the shot, then it's up to you to make it work. But I got the shot, and I was the only junior on the defense. Everybody else was seniors, right? So I got the shot, and I sustained it. And it was the best. We all live in our glory years in high school or college or whatever, but that was a great year for me, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a kind of a great topic too. Again, it's something that I'm super passionate about, whether it's in my athletic background or just in life in general. But if you can kind of talk a little bit about, because what you just mentioned was like gaining 20 pounds and doing that. I highly doubt it's because you weighed 175 instead of 155 or whatever your weight was then.
145.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sure it was more, they recognized where your effort was placed, and that you were working hard for them, for the team, for a result, and you weren't taken for granted. And I think a lot of times coaches, once they recognize effort, it means more to them, right? You're coachable, you're moldable, you're hungry, and you're the one who's going to run that extra bit, right? And do all those because of the effort you're putting in before you get your shot. Yeah. So can you kind of talk about that as a leader, as far as kind of recognizing effort and what that does to you as the leader, watching people give more effort, and kind of what that means to you?
Sure. I would say, just in healthcare, I think for me, it's people that want to learn.
Mm,
Um, if to see someone like want to become an LPN or an RN, continue their education, um, go to a conference, get a certification, when they're always stretching themselves to like learn something new, you know that person's always going to be like, uh, pay attention. They're going to have intention. They're going to do things that other people aren't going to do. They're going to be engaged constantly. That's who you want in your, whether it's your clinic or your department or whatever you're, in healthcare, or even like, you know, it could be in food service, it could be in housekeeping. It doesn't matter where it is.
mm,
If the passion is there and the hardworking intentionality, that's what I would look for. That's what I look for in when I hire people. And I think, we've done a lot of hiring here, and I look for talent. I look at their resume, but I look for the raw talent in someone, you
mm.
know, um, and they may not have the shiniest, biggest, coolest resume out there, but if they have uh, raw talent, raw some authenticity in who they and are transparent and are humble and don't give me those canned answers. That's what I like, the vulnerability in someone, because we all have that. And I work on I don't try to be perfect. I used to try to be perfect. It doesn't work. Um, so I work on progress,
Yeah.
and I try to lead quietly and try to get people to think for themselves and stretch and look for solutions.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like what you were just describing, what you look for is what your coach saw in you,
You're right, man.
right?
You're exactly right, bro.
Because you want to bring out that in people, and typically, like you demonstrated too, those are the people that are willing to humble themselves and play whatever position you need them to, right? And
Exactly.
in your clinic, in your life, in whatever way, right? They're in it for the we, not for the me. And I think because I know you've done some work with Neuro Leadership Institute and some of that brain-based coaching, and so, obviously with David Rock, and you mentioned quiet leadership already. So kind of how do you find that balance of autonomy to give people room and time and space to think, and have them not think that you're disengaged,
Mm,
still giving them room to think, right? And kind of being comfortable with silence in a conversation, some of those things. How do you do that well?
that's a good question. In my experience work, when I was started getting into this, I was more of how can I call it, give a lot of direction.
Mm.
Like, you should do this. You should watch this video. You should read this study. Um, that didn't work.
Mm.
Shocking, right?
Well,
That doesn't work because I'm not a physician. Uh, I don't know what they go through. So it took me a while to learn how to sit and be quiet, like you said. Try to get them to think on their own and constantly clarify what else. What does that look like? On a scale of 1 to 10, you're constantly measuring how they're feeling about something. What does that feel like? How important is this to you? Uh, I'm going to give you as much uh, data as you can handle, and we're gonna look at it and look for things that are those insight moment, the dance of insight, as David Rock, as they call it. It's this dance, man. You're doing with whoever you're talking with, and you're trying to have them become like, oh my gosh, well, no wonder I'm struggling here. No wonder. My favorite example of this is looking at a physician's practice, and it's Tuesday morning or something, where because we can break stuff down to days of the week, hours. Anyway, his Tuesday mornings were just struggling. And he goes, oh, you know what? It's my day to take the kids to school, and I'm always late to work. And I know I'm stressed out, and I'm sure my clients, my patients feel my stress, even though I'm trying to hide it. They feel it, and it throws my whole day off.
Mm.
You know, so it became like, there's your answer. So it's not like, you're not like, he came up with like, oh, that's it. And so he changed his schedule, and it made a huge impact. So it's like, how do you get them to come up with the answer? It's a collaboration type thing, but you're kind of leading them that way because you can kind of feel it. And you say, you know, what is this graph, or what is this data telling you? You ask them the questions so they think about it. Because we, as TJ, you know, we always want to think for everybody. Like, I'm going to tell you what's wrong. Oh, you know what's wrong? Your Tuesdays. Let him come up with it.
Right.
That's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you feel like people can, and is there anything you've learned with your experience? I know you've done a ton of training with, you know, some patient experience, obviously with your previous role and what you're doing now even. But is there anything that anybody can do without some of that granular data? Because that's really unique that a lot of people, and think of like cross industries, right? So even if I'm a banking industry, when's the day that people are the happiest, right? Well, you can say, well, that's different for everybody, right? So like that's hard to find. But so how do you feel like people can kind of be self-aware and kind of reflect a little bit, or is there anything you feel like they could maybe ask some of their customers, clients around that, so that they could kind of learn from when they're operating at their best?
Sure. You know, I've read, when I joined this department, there was this book. The previous administrator left a book on here as a book on civility. And, you know, just just basic civility and basic etiquette as being a nice person. I do talk about that with people sometimes, but you know what, and that does help in a way, because we get so caught up on our daily routine. We kind of we forget about those little nuances about being courteous and kind, and just being really nice to your patients or your customers. But you know, every experience is inherently personal. No matter if you're going to what to Essentials to go eat, or you're seeing a patient in your room, and it's in everybody's mind, in every individual's mind, it's a connection of, you know, intellectually, emotionally, and there's physical connection, there's spiritual connection, there's all this connection happening, and it's all different every experience. So what happens with you know, we talk about physicians a lot. A physician gets in a routine of like treating everyone kind of the same, even though their experience is going to be so different in that moment. Because, you know, we physicians are under a lot of pressure to go and to get productive and get people through. But the moment someone realizes like everyone is an individual, they're going to have a different reaction, and they know this, but their basal ganglia takes over, and they start doing stuff automatically, you know. Because I experienced it with my mom. My mom was a patient here, and we went to the outpatient visit, and it was mechanical. It was predictable. It was very non-emotional, non-authentic, you know. So that was awkward for me. And so when she had her event in the hospital, inpatient, and it was not great. That's when the physicians do become, the humanity oozes out of them when things are going wrong or things aren't great. You know, you see tears in their eyes. You see them like experiencing the pain with you, you know, on when things don't go right. But it's those encounters when they're just going through the motions. Yeah, it's not a huge deal, but it's a way to think like there's a better way to do it. And I think if you practice that in that outpatient setting, it'll even ooze more. It'll be more impactful in any setting that you're with a patient, you know. Anyway, I kind of got off on that, but I think for me, it's every experience is inherently personal, and you have to understand that if you're really gonna connect with people.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think one thing that, that you kind of touched on that I think would be an interesting thing to kind of look at as well, as far as the people delivering that care, that again, you said it was kind of a little impersonal at the time. I'm sure they feel that too, and in days where we're super busy and days that we care about the patient. Because whenever you ask anybody in those clinic settings, what do you care the most about? Everybody says the patient.
Of course.
Not because it's automatic, but because they actually mean it. It's
Mhm.
just sometimes when you're busy, intentionality and effort sometimes don't exactly match, right? And so,
Right.
effort as in I was on time, right?
Right.
Or you disengaged, right? And I know one thing you've talked a lot about is like what actually matters to customers, right? It could be healthcare customers or any customer anywhere, right? And that's one thing I think would be like a great breath of fresh air if you have any insight on kind of what actually matters in this economy of, we're experiencing the world as consumers in a totally different way every day, right? I mean, just even
Totally.
we were trying to find, we hope some local taxi company helps us out to get a ride from A to B, but now we can just do Uber and somebody's just waiting somewhere, right? Like,
Yeah. I used it this week. I used to Lyft this week.
right, or Lyft or Uber, right, whatever it is. And so
Yeah.
it's a matter of like, but we make choices sometimes by chance, but most of the time we make choices. What are some things that you found that really can kind of help make that experience something that people choose over and over again, and they're willing to tolerate, like a bad cup of coffee at your favorite coffee shop? Why are they willing
Yeah.
to tolerate that? What
Well,
do you think there that would be kind of be great for different businesses to be able to implement to kind of gain that customer loyalty?
right. And before I get to that, you triggered something in me that when I first started getting involved in experience work, I read a really good article. I think it was the Harvard Business Review. I'm not going to tell you the date when this was written because I want you to kind of guess. But it talks about this, the economic progress and the four stages of evolution of economic progress, right? So as my grandmother, and this, it's all based on birthday cakes. We've all experienced birthday cakes, right? Have you heard this?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So my grandmother baked a birthday cake, from scratch, right? I mean, it's like this, from there's no, it's like from scratch from the earth. That older generation, everything was from scratch, everything.
Yeah.
My mom, I know, as I watch her do this all the time, would go to the store, buy the cake in a box. Betty Crocker, boom, boom, boom. Heck, I made it. Awesome, right? So that's more of a goods type economy, right? And then as a parent myself, uh, I would just go buy the cake. I'm in charge of the cake. I'm going to go buy it. So that's a service economy, right? They're going to do that for me. Now, the experience economy. You got to, and this, my kids were this way too. Chuck E. Cheese, any place that's going to have this massive experience for you, they just throw in the cake. The cake's free. The cake's part of the deal, you know. And so that's the experience. Everything's about experience now. Like, well, why are we going to go to, there's a place at the mall where they bowling and everything. Every place has a birthday package, and the cake is it's just part of the deal now. Where it used to be made by scratch, you know, uh, scratch goods, services. Now it's experience. It's all about experience. So that article was written in 1998.
Wow.
That was how long ago people were seeing this. And Harvard Business Review is a pretty good publication. So they're in the top. I think the heading was innovation. So yeah, and so that's where this started way back then. And now we're seeing it it's developing in the healthcare now. It's all about the experience. And that's kind of triggering for some positions, but it really is about the experience. And to answer your initial question, it's about, to me, it's being authentic and transparent. Just tell me if you're going to be, if it's going to take a long time. Tell me all the things about the product I'm looking at, or tell me, just be real with me and authentic, and treat me as an individual, not like a number. We talk about that in healthcare all the time. But for me, it's authenticity. It's the biggest thing to take away. No matter what you're selling, what your goods or services is, just be authentic and be real. And you mentioned coffee, which I love coffee. When people come into I'm a barista at a coffee shop, as you know, part-time basis, but I like for them to come in, and they're coming in for coffee. What do I ask them? How's your day been? What's your day like? What are you doing tonight? We don't talk about, oh, do you want to hear any specials about coffee? Do you want to, we got some new beans in, do you want to try this new roast? That's the last thing they want to talk about. They just want a fresh, hot cup of coffee. And when you kind of distract them in a way or engage in them at a different level, they become engaged and they're like, oh, well, thanks for asking. You do this great too. Same in healthcare. You don't want to talk to someone, oh, you're here for your gallbladder. You don't start out that way. You start like, hey, how was your weekend? Or what'd you do this week? Or you mentioned something on the shirt or the hat, like we've talked about. Oh, you're a veteran, or you're a Mizzou fan, or whatever. So it's that, and that's just connecting without, I don't know, be authentic to you. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. A couple thoughts around that, because we often place our priority as our customer's priority.
Totally.
Right. So like, I want to get in and out. Right. And so if you think about the idea of when you pull up to a place that has a line, right? No matter what it is, right? Instantly, people think one of two things: it's not worth it. It must be great because everybody wants it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Those are two things, right? And either you pull away, or you settle in and turn on some music and just, I know this, like Chick-fil-A, for example,
Sure.
right?
You wait.
Always have a line.
Yeah.
And people it feels like it goes by so fast, right? Time, because they're getting what they're expecting in food, just like coffee, right? I think that's one of the things why people love coffees. They can, like, Americano is an Americano is an Americano mostly, right? So,
Right.
people like consistency. They like the experience of sitting in a place that's like that. Sociologically, we think about people who sit in coffee shops are blank, right? So we have our identity kind of hit there, like, I'm going to sit in a coffee shop because it's relaxing and nobody really talks, and
Right.
and so they appreciate consistency, right? So like, what if businesses was focused on consistency, right? In the sense of keep doing what you've always done, but like you said, just that little extra touch. Like Chick-fil-A, like, we're really glad you came here today. The guy up midway through the drive-through to get your menu, he could wait till the speaker, right? But they got rid of the speaker for the most part.
Brilliant.
But it's the same service, just in a new way with just a little bit more effort. And I think that's, as consumers, what we appreciate is just a touch more effort, and that could be done by anybody. It doesn't have to be done by the manager. It could be done by anybody.
That's right. And now you're seeing, and we'll always talk about coffee, but now coffee shops, you can pre-order your latte. That's great. The less effort you put on the customer, you make things easy for me. Oh, I can just click on my phone, get my latte, walk in, walk out. I love that. Or I can go into the coffee shop, wait in line. That's also that could also be an experience that's worth waiting for. It's what you want in the moment. And but we've talked about effort a lot tonight, and what I look for in experience, I want minimal effort on a lot of things. But like you said, it depends on what it is. I'll wait in line for things. I'll click a little more on a website, but I think what gets lost in a lot of translation about this is that sometimes we, as either healthcare or any other business, try to do too many things to reduce effort, and things get lost, and things become disjointed. And so the people that do it really well, like you mentioned Chick-fil-A, I think you can pay. You don't even pay at the window now anymore. You just pick up your food and leave. They're always thinking on how to make it better, easier on the person in the drive-thru. Always thinking that way.
Yeah. And one thing I think what would be interesting in the sense of customer experience is, we're all customers of something, right? So we don't really have to go too far to feel customer service at different levels.
Right.
You and I chatted about cell phones, like cell phone companies, right? we're kind of at the liberty of whatever they're willing to let us do and whatever experience they want to give us, because there's only so many options, but we need it. It's a resource for us at this point, you know,
Right.
and it's interesting to think about one moment, like I just told you, when I thought they were about to close and the guy was like, no, come on in. I was like, I don't really care how the rest of this goes. Like, this is
Nope.
great. I was
Nope.
willing to bail and let the guy have a few more minutes off, right? But and so I think one of the thing is too, when you talk about leaders and businesses and just people in general, like everybody plays a role, right, in the experience of anybody doing anything. But it's also just look around, right? And a lot of people compare the airline industry, like Southwest just does it differently than United, right? Some
Totally.
people don't ever fly Southwest, and some people only fly Southwest.
Right.
But there's value in looking around to see what others are doing. But like you mentioned earlier, Chick-fil-A is not looking at any other restaurant. I don't even need to name one. They're not looking at another restaurant to figure out how to get better. They're just trying to be better than what they were doing yesterday. And that's one thing that I'm super, super encouraged by. And some of the things that you've talked about, like just get better at your own stuff and don't try to be better than McDonald's, right?
Right.
Because McDonald's is a totally different style and strategy than Chick-fil-A.
That's right. And I mean, I have AT&T, and they try to be like Apple. It doesn't work.
Right?
It's like be AT&T. Don't try to be Apple. You
Yeah.
can't do it. And with your phone experience, it became inherently personal when the guy said, "Hey, no problem. Come on in. You guys are boom. You guys are connected. You're done." He knows he sold a phone to you. He knows it.
Yeah. 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 Again, it's just a moment, and again, it's pretty cool to see these days, especially with COVID, and just I don't know if you have any experiences you can kind of think out back on as far as just with COVID and how people are still trying to make it a personal experience when we're all in masks and we can't come in anymore and we're sitting away from everybody, and those kind of things. Like those businesses that are closing, I think kind of struggled with the experience anyway.
Right.
Not all, right? There's different reasons, but I think there's a lot to be learned by those great companies that are doing well and thriving in the middle of all this when you can't be as personal as you used to be.
Yeah, we've gone into telehealth. Most of our visits were telehealth. And how do you become intimate and personal with that? You can. You know, you have to make eye contact on the computer. You have to talk about things that aren't related to your visit over computer. You just transform that into your interface on the computer. It's not easy, and some patients cannot stand it. But I think if you I go back to being humble and being transparent, like, hey, we know this is difficult for you, and we're so sorry we have to do this, but to keep you safe, we're going to do this for a couple months. That explanation and transparency about what your experience is going to be like for a while, then I'm okay with it. Maybe if you just doing the visit, like, hey, this is what we're there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
There's a narrative to go through. There's a way to uh, explain things where they're like going to be okay with it. And some people, no matter what the experience is on whether Zoom or in person, they're going to want in person. Or some people want Zoom. Or so what COVID has done for us, we're still seeing 30% of our patients over telehealth because they prefer it, and we're going to go with that for a little while. It's up, we're going to what's best for the patient. If it's best for the patient to come in, then we were going to reapproach the subject. Hey, we really need you to come. It's all about that authenticity and interpersonal relationship with your patient or your customer. That they like, oh man, they really know me and they really care about me. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And, I think there's a lot to be learned by a lot of people there, right? So kind of providing the same service in a new way, whether it's curbside pickup at a sit down restaurant, right? It's just kind of the food is worth it and people are going to want your food, and, it cuts down on some other costs, right? Because you don't need to be inside as much. But so one thing that I've appreciated about you is your kind of openness, right? We talk a lot about, kind of David Rock and growth mindset and some of that, but just one thing that you've kind of given me some feedback on directly is the idea of I appreciate you, and the idea of appreciating people and actually saying that, right? So in an expression of gratitude, if you will. We've talked a lot about gratitude and different mindset stuff, but so if you can just kind of share a little bit about some of the moments that you've actually said I appreciate you, and kind of has that shifted anything in your mindset about kind of how you see things, or just appreciate some of the simple things that maybe
Mhm.
you kind of didn't pay attention to before, just anything along those lines.
Yeah, it's become like a tiny habit for me to try to do. You
Okay.
know, tell people that I appreciate them in the moment, whether it's at Lowe's or I saw the Mizzou football coach at the coffee shop, and he was kind enough to engage with me, the head coach, and he's like, because I asked him a question, and it was just a really cool moment, and he goes, I go, man, and it just came out of me like, man, I appreciate you being here. He's first year coach. He's dealing with the pandemic, and he said, "Man, I appreciate you too." And it was just like, wow, that's weird. It was like a really cool thing, and it makes you feel good that he was listening to me
Mm,
and he responded. Like, because sometimes people just like whatever weirdo, you know what I'm saying? But he was like engaging, like, "Hey, I appreciate you too. Appreciate your support," is what he said, and and I will say, and I sometimes I ride the bus, and I say I appreciate you to the bus driver. I mean, what a thankless job that some. Think about that. Um, and they're providing a service for me, and I think it's a great tiny habit to get into, and just I'll email people, hey, I appreciate you, or text them, I appreciate you being on my team.
mm.
It's such a simple thing, and and it makes a huge impact. You know.
Yeah.
So I give you credit. You're the one that kind of got me on that, because I never said that thing. I would never say that to people, or grateful for this or appreciate that. Always taken for granted.
Yeah.
And people say thank you a lot, but I think when you say I appreciate you, I appreciate what you did there. That's a little like extra, in my opinion. It feels more authentic, like we talked about. It feels like, oh, that's really important to him. So yeah, and I catch myself kind of getting in a rut of not doing it, and just kind of taking things for granted, like normal. It's what we do. But you have to like, what's my prompt going to be, my trigger to kind of say, I gotta, because usually it's something they do for me, or they say something nice to me in a line, or do a little project for me. That's what triggers it. Like it's a good practice. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the, and again, it's both sides win, right? In the sense of it feels
Sure.
good to say it, but it also, and it kind of getting into the science a little bit, is it releases that dopamine for both of you, right? Because it feels good for you to say it, but then the other people, like you said, right, just like, oh, it mattered to them that he even responded to me,
Right.
and for him to right now, even though he hasn't even coached a game yet, to hear that you appreciate without needing anything, without getting anything. You're not like, hey, coach, I appreciate you. By the way, you want to buy my coffee, right? Like that's not the way appreciation generally works,
Right.
right? And I think the cool thing about I appreciate you, typically people will kind of pause and think and say, I appreciate you too. Like they'll
Of
think,
course.
right? Whereas thank yous typically result in you're welcome.
Totally.
Transaction closed,
Yep.
right? I gave you this, you said you're welcome, right? That just feels totally different than I appreciate you too, because it's still
Mm-hmm.
open, in my opinion,
Yeah.
right? How it feels when you interact that way. So anyway, just kind of a cool thing. I've enjoyed getting to hear how you've used it, and that's why I asked you that. It's just because I think it's cool for other people to think about. Like I just appreciate people and what they're doing, not that they're doing anything for me.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
just even somebody like at the screeners, right? When we come into our health system, I say, I appreciate you sitting here every day. She's asked to do it. Like there's one person in particular who's there almost every day. But still, I just say like I appreciate you being here, and like hopefully she might hear that someday and actually be like, okay, it matters to somebody that I'm sitting here, that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not doing this as I have to. it kind of reaches at a different level. And that's some of the examples you've talked about that really kind of inspired me to kind of share the message even more, because it's been cool to hear.
Yeah, and like you said, I used to not do that
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
and just it's this little tiny habit you have to think about. And when you think about it, like, man, I should do that more. You know, life is,
Yeah.
people are doing people are doing things for everyone all the time, but we don't express the gratitude about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great, man. I appreciate you sharing that. So,
Mhm.
um, well, yeah, man, I don't really have too much else to kind of chat about. Do you have, I mean, you and I could chat for hours, but is there anything else that you kind of had on your mind or any insights along the way that you wanted to kind of share or?
I don't think so, TJ. I mean, we went through a lot, and you know, I think when we talk about experience, I enjoy talking about that. But what we're now seeing is that, like, it's become a management style and a way to look at experience management as a whole entity in itself. It's like, you have all this operational data and you have this experience data, the why and the what. How does it mix? How does it intersect? And what I learned, I can't just focus on the experience, the sentiments, and the why something's happening. I got to look at the what. What is it? Is there a resident involved? Is there a diagnosis? There's all this data that can be tied in, and then that's where you get the action from. You can't just get action from data or sentiments. You got to tie it together. And I think when I learned that I really can't direct people to change behavior, especially physicians, it's got to be kind of an insight moment for them. That's the biggest. And as managers and leaders,
Yeah.
it's like that situational leadership we talk about a lot. We can support, we can coach. You want to get to that point where you just delegate. Hey, can you go I got a project, I'm on it. When you're constantly directing someone, it's like me telling a physician to be better patient experience. It will not work.
Right.
It won't work. So I think for me, it's going to be a constant journey. Is like, how can I talk to people, professionals, whether they're whatever industry it is, they're leaders, and how can I make them get the aha moment? Like, oh man, I see it now. Then they say, can you help me with that? Right? Because they're probably, I have no idea what to do. What do I do? Let's work on it together. I'm here to support you, because a lot of them don't know, so that's all I got, bro.
Yeah, well, I'd love to. I mean, obviously, I know you have a lot going on. I just love for people to be able to reach out to you in some way. Again, whatever industry they're in and wherever they are, to have a Zoom call with you or to have a conversation with you just about patient experience. I know you do a ton with Qualtrics and patient experience and just different.
Mhm.
Again, the word patient experience could be interchanged with customer of anything, but
Totally. Now they're calling it human experience
yeah, I mean that's probably the
or
best.
digital experience, or
Yeah,
or everything's got the X behind it now, and so that's why, I mean, Qualtrics, I think, has coined the term experience management.
yeah,
How do you manage the experience? And yeah, I mean, I'd be more than happy to talk to anyone about anything experience related, or coaching, or brain based thought, and quiet leadership, all that stuff.
yeah, man. Yeah, well, I know I learn a lot from you. I learn all the time. I'm super grateful that you're in my tight circle, that we get our greatness, and just more and more learning every day. That's the thing I love about it. Is every time I see something that I learn, I want to share it, and I know you do the same. And that's just profound. And again, it inspires me to keep learning. So I appreciate all this.
What did I send you today? What I heard on Twitter today? Greatness is not on sale, right?
Right?
Yeah, it's never on sale. Leadership's not on sale either. Those are things that are like, I don't want to say, use analogy, pay full price for, but you're not going to find a great leader on the sale
Nope.
rack, right? And greatness is not on the sale rack.
Right.
And so there's a reason why things are on the sale rack. Is because they don't do well.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't want to be on the sale rack. just come up with this analogy as I'm like feeling this, right? I mean, I want to be full price. I don't know, but that was a great thing. Is from another coach. I get a lot of stuff from coaches because I connect with coaching,
Yeah.
Especially athletics. I mean, and that's why you see people perform at high levels for their coaches because they get everything out of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Bring out more of them than they even see in themselves. So.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
And the fun fact, I think the coach at Mizzou, I don't think he can play college football, right?
No, I don't.
So you don't have to be this amazing college football athlete to be a great coach.
Right.
And that's happened. That's all over the country like that. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great, man. Well, cool.
All right.
Well, I appreciate the time. I appreciate everything. I will, I'm super excited to get this out. There's so many people that need to hear stuff like this. So we're going to get it out.
Totally, man.
Just help people start living the sweet life, right?
I love it. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing me on. I mean, it's an honor to be on here with you, and you have a ton of knowledge, and I manage you up everywhere I go, and I'm trying to get you to spread the word in every venue I can think of because it's helped me a ton, obviously, and so I appreciate you allowing me to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, man. This will be great. I appreciate you sharing some time and making time this evening. So,
Of course. Anytime, man.
you're doing great things, my friend.
All right. What do we do? Are we done now?
Yeah. Hang on. Let me stop recording.